Fafi MP Salah Yakub sentiments that president with good development records should not be limited to 2 terms has caused mixed reactions among Kenyans in the country. On their part, the Kenya Human Rights Commission has come forward to condemn the utterance by the MP, saying this creates the tenure for dictatorial regime as seen in some regions.
Secondly, many Kenyans are grappling with an intensifying drought that has led to deaths, yet the government has failed to provide meaningful relief to the communities that are suffering from severe droughts in many parts of the country. Drought has remained a perennial problem and is a governance issue. Further, we are equally concerned about the wave of careless utterances and calculated political events that are happening across the country. We note that nothing happens in isolation, and we reiterate that these are part of a grand scheme to test the democratic resolve of the Kenyans. And the most significant of these utterances is actually a proposal to remove the term limit for the presidency.
They claim that his utterance was against the constitution and democracy in the country.
We therefore call on patriotic Kenyans to stand in defense of the constitution and not cede an inch of our sovereignty as a people. We wish to remind Kenyans of our dark history, especially under the KANU regime, where an imperial presidency emasculated both parliament and the judiciary, effectively creating a corrupt dictatorship that made Kenyans stagnant for decades.
We are equally concerned by recent remarks by the Cabinet Secretary for Education, who is on record stating that universities should generate their own revenue, as the government of Kenya would no longer fund them. Education is a right and must be made accessible to all Kenyans. This attempt to consign rights from public governance to private interest is ill-advised, as it will result in increase in tuition fees.
The argument on the former police officers of the SSU division that was disbanded is turning out to become something that might not have been taken care of by the government, saying that Kenyans should remain vigilant and have a collective responsibility to create a better society for the future.
Some of you may be aware that I've had an experience with the SSU when I was abducted from my house one evening. And the only reason I'm seated here speaking to you is because I was able to go live on Facebook. And then that went viral because I suspect I was going to be disappeared, because that's the unit that has been disappearing Kenyans.
Why we are saying the question of drought is a governance problem is because we have so many countries in the world which operates with the deserts, and they have no problem with water, and they have no problem with food. So as we talk about this crisis, we need to hold the government to accountable. It's just warped policies when it comes to dealing with this kind of issues. The question about SSU, we are also calling for IPOA to just take up responses on extrajudicial killings and also enforce disappearance, because you can't let these kind of issues be addressed by the internal affairs unit. You don't expect police to investigate themselves and then have accountability, because that's also where we are going.
On the Director of Public Prosecution, Nurdin Haji, he has been accused by the Human Rights Commission for falling into the trap of the previous government to prosecute some top officials in the country.
It is so interesting that most of these cases are being withdrawn, targeting people who are politically correct. And we have also issued statements around this, saying if the ODPP converses that then those cases were based on influence, then that borders on abuse of public offices, and therefore they have an obligation to explain to Kenyans then how that happened on their watch, under their watch. So the ODPP therefore needs to be able to account. And therefore, if he is convincing that those cases were based on political influence, then we have also a basis to also tell him, assume even the current process is also under political influence. Are we together? because he's convincing that the previous regime influenced him to file cases. So which means then
He should actually be charged.
exactly should be charged for abuse of public office.
For Ebru TV, Amode Francis.